say I get an audition and I'm like, oh, we need to make a moment out of this. Like, no, you don't, guy. No, you don't. Just be patient, trust that it lives inside of you, and just let it be.
Hi, I'm Gracie Mercedes, and welcome back to Not Blank Enough, a podcast about everyday insecurities and triumphs. In this episode, I'm talking with Michael Trevino, the Mexican-American actor currently on Roswell, New Mexico, talks all about his upbringing in East LA, how he struggles to relax, and what it's like being white passing in Hollywood. I hope you enjoy this intimate conversation we titled Not Patient Enough. And if you do enjoy this or any episode thus far, please leave a rating and review on Apple Podcast. I would love for these important conversations to reach the biggest audience possible. And the more rates and reviews we can get, the better the chances of that happening. Thank you in advance. Hi, Michael. Welcome to Not Blank Enough.
Hello there.
I'm really excited to talk to you because I don't know you that well. And so usually I Google people I'm about to interview, but I did not Google you.
You didn't? Okay.
I did not. No. So I know nothing because I was like, it would be fun to do an interview where I just find out everything on the spot and see where it goes.
Okay, that's very interesting because in leading up to this, I was like, I'm curious. Gracie hasn't, you haven't reached out. Does she want to know the title of this episode for me just to prep and we can see how things, and because I haven't heard from you, I'm like, all right, I think we're just going to like shoot from the hip and see what happens here.
We always shoot from the hip. We never know the title before we actually do the interview.
I actually really dig that. So it's awesome. We're just going to go for it, see what happens.
I love it. So real quick, we met in an acting class at the BGB
Yes,
studio. We had a few classes together. I still remember doing a really fun scene with you and thinking like, that's what I love about acting, that you can do a scene with a complete stranger, have so much fun, have like a really cool connection and then just go from there. And that's what I love about acting. So I just remember that scene so clearly with you. And, over the years, I've done a bazillion scenes. So I think that is a testament to your talent as an actor as well.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Yeah, my time over at BGB Studios, we just had a lot of fun there.
Yeah.
Had a lot of fun. And I think especially in those classes with Steve, starting out with the repetition and doing all that and kind of feeling each other out, just everybody in that class. It was a great group. I had a lot of fun in there.
Yeah. So let's start at the beginning. Tell me about you and your upbringing and where you're from.
I am a native Angelino. I grew up out here. Los Angeles has always been home for me. Grew up in East LA, like Boyle Heights, Montebello area. Family in and all around, like East LA, San Gabriel Valley. Los Angeles has just always been home for me. I'm Mexican, and so growing up in Hispanic culture, like. It's funny. I live close to Hollywood now in West Hollywood, but it's like my home is still just 10 minutes away, where I grew up. And it is different. I mean, Los Angeles is so huge, but it is a different upbringing the more east you go. Mm-hmm. I love it out here. And for me, as far as where I'm at now in life and, being an actor, I think growing up in Los Angeles, it was always wondering like, oh, they're making movies over there? Oh, they're doing television over there? Like, because it felt like it was in my backyard, even though it just felt for me at a younger age more attainable in a way.
Yeah.
And I got to give it to all the friends that I have that come from all over the world and move to Los Angeles to make it in this business. And so I'm very grateful and lucky in that regard that I've always been here. Mm-hmm. It just felt for me more realistic to be able to. Like, oh, I want to go play with what they're doing over there. Like, I want to be part of that, creative space. And so for me, I just love living here.
That's so cool because, it's literally in your backyard and you are kind of a unicorn. There's not a lot of people in Los Angeles that are from here, I feel like. And I'm from New York, born and raised, and I didn't live anywhere else until I moved out here in my late 20s. And so I got that same thing in New York where people were like, what do you mean you're actually from here? You're from the city? I'm like, yeah, I'm from the city. So when you're from a big city that everyone goes to, people are like, they don't understand how you can actually be from here. Right.
And that's always the first thing when you meet somebody. It's like, so where are you from? Like, where, like, I want to know how you got here. And it's like, oh, yeah, I grew up like 15 minutes away.
Yeah.
What are you doing tonight? I'm going to my parents. Yeah. What are you, who's that? Oh, it's my cousin.
That's so it's like, nice.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm very, because I do have a lot of friends and you miss family. You miss family and you want to be close to family. And so I wouldn't say I take it for granted, but there are times where I'm like, I am very blessed and lucky that I have family right here, and it keeps me keeps me grounded.
Yeah, and where you're from, East LA, I mean, there's so much gentrification now in Los Angeles, so I would assume the neighborhood is a little bit different than when you grew up there.
It has changed a bit. My mother, she's still out there in Boyle Heights, and so I visit her often, and I've seen that, the neighborhood has evolved a bit. I think the arts district of downtown Los Angeles has kind of gone a little bit more east now, and so you see Boyle Heights changing in that way. It's not drastic. I think it's for the better, but there are some really cool, coffee shops, bars that are opening up that are kind of just doing a bit of a facelift to the city, and so I hope that it's welcomed. I think it is. But at the end of the day, I'll be honest, it's still Boyle Heights. You still go through there and drive through there, and there's taco trucks on the corner where you can pick up really good food, and it's just a neighborhood. Kids out playing in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
I mean, July just passed, and there's fireworks that are going off at least for like 3 months in and around July that just doesn't end, and I feel like that's never going to change.
And that's so interesting. Yeah, I'm in Silver Lake, which is also a
it's
gentrified
close.
neighborhood.
Yeah.
And still every July. I mean, I think it's like May, June, July.
I was about to
August.
say June. It's like early June it starts. July hits heavy, and it's just trailing off now. But you know what? That's LA, man. That's just what happens. It's just what it is.
Tell me about like your school experience. Like, what was that like? Were you in school with a lot of other Mexicans? Did you go to school in Boyle Heights?
I did. I went to school in Montebello, and I went to a private school, a private Catholic school, Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal. And then my parents decided, you were going to go to private school. And I feel like growing up at the time, that was just, I didn't know any different. It was like, you go to private school and it's Catholic and you go to church and you wear a uniform and that's how it's going to be. And you sometimes have a nun who is your teacher. And so that's how it was for me in grade school. And then after graduating that, I went to Don Bosco Tech, which is an all-boy Catholic high school. There's also there was Bishop Amat, St. Paul, Cathedral. In the areas that I grew up, it's a lot of private Catholic high schools, and that's just the Salesian family brotherhood, and that's just where you went. And I ended up going to Bosco Tech, and like I said, private Catholic school. But in there, Montebello is really close to Monterey Park. I went to school with mixed races across the board. Whether it was white, Hispanic, African American, Asian. I mean, there's a big Asian community in Monterey Park, which is right next to Montebello, and so my high school experience with people in my class was really diversified.
That's so interesting. We lived kind of parallel lives because in New York, it's a similar thing. I think in all big cities, you go to Catholic school because the education is just usually better than the public schools, at least that's what it was in New York. And then also being from a Latin family, you go to Catholic school because that's, part of your religion, part of your upbringing. And so I went to 12 years of Catholic school, grade school, and then an all-girls Catholic high school in Manhattan. And it was kind of that same thing. And it was actually, they both were really diverse.
Growing up, did you know that's how it was going to be for you going to school? Like that was just the path you were going to take? Because surely there's public schools around, but for me it was like, you're going to go to Catholic school and you're going to go to Catholic school until you graduate. That's how it was for me. Was it the same for you? Did you know that's how it was going to be?
I didn't know any different because I started so young, but then in 5th grade my mom was like, all right, we'll try public school, and I got into so much trouble within the first 3 months. I was getting into fights, my best friend was smoking cigarettes, it was just crazy. So she pulled me right out and put me right back into Catholic school.
Wow. So that only lasted 2 months, you said?
That lasted 3 months. I mean, this is Brooklyn, New York, back in the, I'm aging myself, but back in the 80s and 90s. So it was not, public schools were rough.
I bet.
And so, I was a Catholic school girl.
Interesting. See, that's funny because I remember in high school, I didn't mind going to all boy Catholic high school, but there was other Catholic schools that were co-ed. It was like Bishop Amat and St. Paul, and I was like, man, I wish I went there. I wanted to go, there, but I would have found it interesting if I would have been able to get 3 months like you did on the other side and see how that would have been.
Yeah, I was definitely better off in Catholic school.
Yeah.
So in that time in your childhood, whether it was in elementary, grade school, or in high school, what feelings of not enough-ness did you have? What was your blank looking back now?
So I played sports. I played football all throughout high school. And so I was, an athlete, jock, if you will, playing sports, but I didn't feel I was part of the popular crowd, to be honest. And so as far as at that age, what was I not enough? It was maybe not fitting in enough. And by fitting in, I mean I always played sports, right? So I was hanging out with those guys, but I didn't feel popular, I guess. I didn't feel popular. And I guess honestly, if I'm being honest with myself, looking back then, if I'm playing sports, I'm supposed to be popular. And so that just wasn't really the case for me. Yeah, because I can remember, like, I played sports, but then I would still kind of get bullied by some upperclassmen that played sports.
Aw.
And yeah, it's true. And so I still had to deal with that. And I remember thinking about it now, I can remember being like, wait, this isn't supposed to work like this. I'm playing sports. Why the fuck am I getting picked on? Wait a second.
Right.
I can, man, you're making me think back now. Now I'm thinking about it and I'm just like, wow, yeah, it never made sense to me. That's not why I played sports. I've always played sports since I was younger. But I can remember being like, I guess I'm not one of the popular kids because I'm still dealing with being bullied. Yeah, I guess there's a bit of confusion there. So I guess what my not enough was at that point was, I guess I'm not really fitting in, or I'm not part of this clique that I wanted to be in. But now that I'm looking at it, did I even want to really be a part of that?
Right. So. And it makes sense because it's like that's what we see on TV. That's what we're inundated with as kids. It's like the jocks, the boys that play sports are the popular ones. They're the ones that get all the ladies. They're the ones who do the bullying.
Yeah, and I thought that's how it was going to be, and it wasn't. I was dealing with some things here and there, but I'm happy that it played out that way because it kind of, I don't know, it toughened me up in a way that kind of maybe can, I not be negative, but it just gave me a tougher exterior, I guess, which can sometimes not work in my favor at times in life. But because I went through that in high school where, I thought this was going to be easy. I thought I was going to fit in, and then I wasn't. It makes me, for whatever reason, work a little harder or be relentless in whatever it is I'm doing or getting involved in.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. It's like the cliche that those who kind of peaked and those who are popular in high school usually peak in high school. Yeah. Because there is this thing of when you are younger and being treated as someone quote unquote special or popular or whatever the case may be, that can kind of work against you because the kids like you or the kids like me who were being bullied or made fun of or whatever the case may be, that builds character and that makes you stronger and that makes you, like you said, work harder or also kind of realize what a real friendship is, like because I'm sure you had friends who were nice to you for other reasons besides that you played sports.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. I mean, I got 4 friends from high school that are still in my group chat and I talk to those guys every day. Awesome. And so, yeah, I still talk to friends from high school,
That's awesome.
Granted, they're close. They're 20 minutes away from me. But yeah, absolutely. I've held on to those lifelong friendships.
And then when did you know you wanted to be an actor? Because I know you mentioned it earlier. Was it like right away since you were a kid?
I want to say that it probably around my junior year of high school, senior year, I was like, okay, I'm going to go to college. And then what am I going to do? And from my parents, the dream was for me to go to University of Southern California. It was to go to college and get a college degree and major in whatever my interest was. So that was the plan. And after high school, I went to Pasadena City College, and I was going to do 2 years there and then transfer over to USC. But in that first year at Pasadena City College, I was still a very immature young boy, not really taking it seriously, and I just wasn't applying myself in school. I was really wasting my time. It was during that year that I decided, this is what I really want to do. I want to act. I want to be an actor. I want to be in the movie and television industry. That's where I want to go. That's what I want to do. And so I made a deal with my parents to allow me to take a year off of school, to take the following year off of school to go pursue this dream. And so I was able to do that. And within that year, I can remember, I think I still have the book. Actually, I was just in my storage unit the other day, and it's called, the book is literally called How to Be a Working Actor. And I think I got it at Barnes & Noble. I got it at Barnes & Noble years ago. I still have it. It's amazing. And so I read that and I was like, okay, there's an agent and there's the manager and this is, the acting classes. And so, long story short, I ended up, sending out this fake resume with the cover letter to all these agencies with the agent tabs from Samuel French. And I got out of the 120 I sent, I got 3 people interested or 3 callbacks. And so I met with a few agencies and signed with one. And within that year, though, I was taking an acting class and was thankfully auditioning for commercials. So to me, it wasn't until after high school that I said, okay, I'm going to go all in. I'm going to give all my energy and focus to this dream. How do I obtain that? How do I do it? Let's go for it. But probably just throughout a younger age in high school, I'd always go to the movies with my dad. He loves going to the movies. He was watched every movie ever. He can recite scenes and lines from different movies. So I'd always go with him to the movies. That was just kind of my upbringing, was like, what movie are you going to go see? And it wasn't always like cartoons at a young age. I'd see like PG movies, PG-13, rated R when I shouldn't have, now that I'm looking back on it. But I was always watching a movie with my dad. And so I think that kind of maybe started it, of like, oh, here's this storytelling medium that I'm watching on a television. That seems really cool. I'm entranced in it every time I'm watching. How do you do that? That looks fun. Oh, you can make a living off that? I want to do that, you know? And so I think that kind of was in my subconscious for so many years at a young age. And it wasn't until after high school that I was like, okay, let me go after this. Let me essentially drop out of college and go chase this dream. And luckily, to my parents' credit, they gave me the 1 year off. Everything kind of started rolling within that year. It was like booking an old Navy commercial and little things like joining SAG. And then things started becoming real. You know, I think I got like a $3,000 paycheck one time, and they were like, "Oh, okay, oh, all right, go ahead, keep doing this, yeah, all right, let us know how it goes." Like, so
that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, props to your parents for being so supportive, and that's a great age to do that. You're so young still, so you can like take that leap, and it's not like you have a family to support or anything. You can actually go for something.
Yeah, I'm forever grateful for that, because it was a big deal of like, you're going to go to college and get a degree, and they allowed me to pursue this, and so far we're still riding that wave.
And then what happened after that first year?
After that first year, I joined SAG. I booked a couple commercials and maybe a co-star here or there, and it was coming around the time to start enrolling in the next school year. Mm-hmm. And so I had worked, but I hadn't really worked, right? I'm still like little jobs here and there. And it wasn't until right at the end, I ended up booking this Disney Channel movie of the week type thing. Yes. And I was 19 years old. It was called Cowbells, and it shot in Toronto. And so this was the first job where I told my parents, "Hey, I got a job." And they're like, "Oh, good. Like, what is it? Commercial?" And I was like, "No, it's for the Disney Channel. And they're flying me to Toronto, first class. Can you believe it?" And I'm being put up in this hotel for a month and a half. And that's when they were like, "Oh, wow, okay." And so they went out. Yeah, so in a way, they were like, "Okay, we'll keep. You don't have to, enroll in these classes and get back to college. Like, go shoot this, TV movie, and we'll see how things go." And so I think that's when it hit more realistically. I think was that job, and that was right at the end of the year too, because it was like, man, I guess I'm gonna have to go back to college and try and juggle both. But luckily that happened, and so I went out there and did that.
And that's fast. I mean, some people are in LA for 10 years before anything happens. So the fact that you got a movie on the with the Disney Channel at such a young age is so exciting, and I can see how your parents would be so excited about that, because I remember when I first moved out here, I didn't start acting till way later in life, and I just remember the first year booking a bunch of commercials and thinking, this is it. This is where it goes. This is where it's at. Yeah. I'm just going to do commercials forever. And my mom being like so excited and getting that SAG card. Yeah. And so to have it all happen that first year, that's pretty great.
Yeah, no, it was amazing. And like a lot of luck happening to me. And so I'm so forever grateful of all the opportunities, early on in my career, like booking these co-stars and guest stars and just being on the grind. But like you and me, how we met, like I was always consistently in acting class, and always trying to coach on these auditions and studying and learning and trying to get better at what this tool is. And so just really applying myself. But yeah, I got really lucky.
And then when did you get your quote unquote big break? Because I know you've been on some really huge shows. So tell me about the first one and how that happened.
Oh, geez. I think I wouldn't say big break. One of my first TV series that I booked was it lasted one season. But it was called Kane, and it was on CBS, and it was the first like series regular role that I had booked. And at the time it was like, wow, I'm going to be part of this TV show. And it was a huge cast. My father was played by Jimmy Smits. And,
oh my God.
And my grandmother was Rita Moreno. And my grandfather was Hector Elizondo. Yeah, and it was about this Cuban family. And so, I was part of this family cast, and it's shot in Los Angeles, which I haven't worked in Los Angeles since. This was almost 15 years ago. I haven't worked there since. Yeah, that was my first, consistent job. First series, lasted one season. I think the writer's strike at the time it hit, and it took everything stopped at the time. But after that, still just making the rounds in television where most of my career has been. The longest one, the biggest, I guess significant job was the Vampire Diaries that I did for the CW. At the time, you had like your True Blood, your Twilight. So it was just that whole genre just could not be stopped. And I think that
it was a big time for vampires.
Oh my goodness, all around. And so being a part of that was just a wild time in life. And so crazy, so amazing, so wonderful, ups and downs. But I mean, that series lasted I think, eight seasons. But I was on there for 6 full time, and then the later seasons I kind of popped in and out. But that was the first like consistent, work job, and I think in pop culture, a series that was well received at the time and talked about.
For sure. Okay, wait, let's go back real quick to Kane, because this is your first big job, and you're working with like 3 huge Latinx actors, like Rita, Jimmy, like these are like huge actors. Mm-hmm. What's that like? What are you feeling on set? What's your not enoughness when you get onto that set?
In the audition, because Jimmy was producing, I can remember in the later stages of casting, I read with him, because he was in the casting process, and that alone, I was just like, oh my God, it's Jimmy Smits, And so I'm in there, and I remember I got really excited about telling my parents, because they've been watching him for years, and auditioning and then being with him on set and being like, oh, he's playing my father. Like for me, wow, it was just such a, it feels like it happened so quickly.
Yeah.
But and at the time, it was for CBS, and they were really pushing it, and they really promoted the hell out of it. And I can remember there'd be a big old billboard on Sunset Boulevard, and it was like I was on there with the rest of the family and the rest of the cast. And I honestly have to say there was no panic in me. Of course, there's nerves, but I think I was just so out of my element of like I didn't have time to panic. It was just like here's the job, you have to do the job. And that's the honest truth. I didn't really panic like, oh my God, it's Jimmy Smits or it's Rita Moreno. Like, yes, these are legends in the game, but at the time I was just so out of my element of like, let me show up to work on time. Let me do my job to the best of my ability. So I didn't have time to really take in like who I'm actually working with and all that. It's funny because you bring this up, and I trip out on it more now than at the time. When I was younger, I was just too like, let's get this job done. Let me not get fired. Let me do everything right to keep this job. But only
what
now,
a blessing that you were able to do that.
Oh yeah.
When you said earlier, you were like, we didn't even prep for this. You don't even want to know what the title of the episode's going to be. So what in your head was your not blank enough?
Oh, well, my not blank enough right now at this period of time and what it's been, because I could be so many things, right? It really could. And I really thought about what affects me in my personal life, but also what affects me as someone who likes to be creative, right? For me, my not enough is patience. I am not patient enough. I am not patient enough.
Oh, wow.
I was juggling a few around, but this one really stuck with me and stayed with me. I am not patient enough, and that is a problem.
Tell me more.
That is a problem. Oh my God, should I talk about all my insecurities right now?
Yes, please. That's what this is for.
Man, this is great. So it's just me and you, right? This is it?
Yeah,
Okay,
this is just it.
So, first off, I guess we'll start on with me and my career, right? Any artist out there, any creative, in any space, music, acting, what writing, whatever it may be, man, I am too often pushing myself too hard for results. It's not praise. That's the wrong word. Recognition. And it's not for look at me. It's like, wait, can anybody see that I'm doing this or that I'm trying? And that's even in when I perform as an actor at times. I probably push too hard for something. For me, honestly, it's stillness. I need to be more still.
Are you always on the go?
I'm always on the go. Mm-hmm. I'm always running around. There's always something that I need to do. And honestly, when it real boils down to it, none of it needs to be done. I could just take a breath and relax and chill the fuck out. But too often, I'm like, I got to go do this. And now I got to go do that. And then there's 3 other things in my head that I haven't done that I'm putting pressure on myself to get done. But all of it is affecting me in a way where it affects the work, right? Or it affects me wanting to be a creative, or affects me in the process of, say I get an audition and I'm like, not struggling over the lines, but it's like, we need to make a moment out of this. Like, no, you don't, guy. No, you don't. Like, just be patient. Trust that it lives inside of you, and just let it be. And so, right? Is this hitting you at all? Like such.
Michael, you have no idea. If any of my friends or family members listen to this episode, they're going to laugh because everything you just said describes me to a T. Like, really? I do not sit still. I cannot sit still. I have a million things going on. I'm doing a podcast. Yeah. I do not need to be doing a podcast, but I'm like, yeah, sure. Let's do something else because I don't have enough things that I'm already doing every single day. And it's that same thing where I always feel like go, 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 go. And there's always that next thing to get to. And sometimes I catch myself not taking the time to just appreciate what I have now, what I have going for now, what I've accomplished thus far. And instead I'm like, what the fuck is next? And I see off your face, I wish people could see your face right now.
I just don't want to cut you off, but that's why my face is like this, because I'm saying, yes, that's it. And that's why if I work on being patient more, I can just look around and count my blessings and be grateful for what I have and know that, like, wow, even when it is bad, it's still really good. Mm-hmm. If it is bad, this moment will pass too. And it's not always going to be like this. And so, the more I remind myself to be patient, it reminds myself to allow myself to take a breath, take a pause, take a beat, be still, and calm down. What is the whole thing? It's more about the journey, right? Than getting to where you want to be. And just, exactly. So like right now, enjoy this. Don't make it harder on yourself. And so that's what I do when I am not a patient in anything that I'm trying to be creative in.
Yeah. And then, it worries me to hear this from someone like you who's been on so many giant TV shows. Now you're on Roswell, which is another like hit show. And it's like, because in my head, I'm like, oh, I'll feel good once I'm a series regular on a TV show. That's like or once I sell my own TV show. Like that's when I'll feel like I've accomplished the thing I've accomplished. Mm-hmm. And I know, like, intellectually, I know that's not true because I have very successful friends who still are like, wanting the next thing or not taking the time to be like, yo, let me like stop and just pat myself on the shoulder for a second because I've accomplished amazing things. I mean, getting on a TV show in Los Angeles is like winning the lottery. And like, selling a show is like winning the lottery, like a show that actually gets on air. So anything we do in this business, and I think this also goes for any creative business. If you're an artist, as far as like a painting, sculptor, if you are a musician, a songwriter, these jobs, though I feel like have to do them because we're creatives, like making money, making a living off of these things are very hard. Mm-hmm. And so it's like anytime you can do that is incredible, but we all want more all the time.
We do. Because you get a taste, right? And then not only that, you do something for a bit. And then I think inherently you want to challenge yourself more. So you're like, I want not necessarily better. I just want different. Right. Mm-hmm. And so that's why. But here's the thing, somebody like you who you have so many things going on. I mean, I haven't seen you in a bit, but I have no doubt you're probably writing 2 separate shorts right now, getting other things going because you're always shooting something, directing something, writing something, producing. So it's I think that we're always going to be this way. Yeah. And that's what's got us to this point in our lives and our careers and our personal life. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. I just think for me to be more patient means to find more balance. That is what is needed for me, really, is more of that. And so I think I keep finding, I was like, is it balance? Am I not good enough? Is it, happiness, content? Like, what is it? And it was patience. It was like, it all came back down to being patient. And that's so like, we're talking about creative professional life, but my personal life, shit, I could be a lot more patient. My relationships would be a lot better, all around, whoever you are, if I was more patient. And so I think that's just a big feeling for me right now is I am not patient enough.
Do you have trouble relaxing? Like
I can, but I have to make a real conscious effort to relax. Yeah. There's always something to be done. I like to stay not busy where it's like I'm not doing anything. I just like to be moving. I like that energy. I get up really early. I work out. That's the beginning of my day, and I try and keep that momentum throughout the day. But for me, I can relax, but it takes work. I mean, that sounds bad. Maybe it shouldn't. It shouldn't be that way. I should be able to relax and tap into that easier. It's harder for me to relax. I can do it, but I really have to set my mind to like, okay, we are going to relax now. I have to put more effort to relax, if that's even like opposite of what it should be.
No, totally. No, I'm the same way. If I have anything on like my to-do list, then I can't relax. Like I have to be able to like check off a bunch of things first. And then in my head, I'm like, once those are done, then I can sit and watch this movie, or then I can go away for the weekend and not worry about X, Y, or Z. But I definitely have that same issue where it's like, yeah, I have to schedule my self-care time.
You do. You do.
Yeah.
Now, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Because you said I was kind of, some of this is very similar for you. Now, you write. Are there ever moments where you're like me, where you are impatient, right? And it's not because you're trying to get to the destination or like, this is where I'm trying to get to, let's get there quicker. But in your process of either coming up with an idea, do you find yourself getting in your own way because of being impatient or being in a rush or doing too much at one time? If it does, what do you do to balance that out for yourself? Because I know you do so much, so I'm curious how do you deal with this? How do you handle it?
Well, it's interesting. I feel like with acting, I've accepted the fact that, hey, this is just something I'm in for the long haul and something I love to do, and auditions will come and go, bookings will come and go. Okay, great, fine. I've accepted that. Because I'm a newer writer, I'm still kind of learning how to deal with it. And what I'm noticing is the creative part, the part of me actually writing, like right now I'm working, I like that you said I would probably be working a couple things. I am. I'm working on
Shocker.
I'm working on a pilot right now.
Yeah.
And I'm in the pilot pitch stage and, working through that with my manager. And then I'm at the very early stages of writing a feature. And it's funny because with the feature, I feel very patient with that. I feel like I have a process. I'm writing a certain number of pages. I just finished the outline. Like, I have a process in my head. I'm like, this is going to take at least like 5 or 6 months, whatever the case may be. Whereas with the pilot pitch stuff, I'm like ready to go. Like, and the thing about that is the next step is getting it out there to try to pitch it. And that stuff takes forever. 'Cause that's stuff I can't control. That's like my manager reaching out to people and then them setting up meetings and then us having those meetings. And so this is like a long process. And then I talk to friends and it's like similar for everyone who writes. It's like, yeah, I was just talking to a friend of mine who's a very prolific writer, and he was talking about his friend's movie and how it took 10 years to make that movie. And I was like, what? And that happens all the time in Hollywood. Like movies and TV shows get shelved for years before they get made. And so accepting the fact that when it comes to writing and actually selling a project or making money off a project or having that project come to life, it could take 2, 3, 4, 10 years. And so I have to remember that, and I have to be patient with that. Whereas the creative part of me actually getting the writing done, I'm a little more patient with, because for me, I'm either in the mood to write something or not. And I don't try to push it when I'm not. And if I have a deadline, then I make myself write every morning. But, some mornings I might write 2 pages. Some mornings I might write 10 pages.
See, and that seems like you're in more control on that end, because that's just you having a session and doing what you got to do and holding yourself accountable for certain deadlines or pages that need to be met. So you're running your own schedule there.
Yeah. I think it's more control. I'm also a control freak. So it's like, if I have control over the schedule, I'm good. If I'm waiting on other people, I'm very impatient.
Yeah, same. I could be the same way.
I did want to talk to you about, because I kind of you're only the third, well, 2 people I had at the same time. You're only the 3rd Latinx person I'm talking to. I've talked to so far. And the first 2 were 2 of my friends, Carlos and Raisa. Carlos is Puerto Rican. Ironically, always plays Mexican on TV.
Yeah.
And then Raisa is Cuban, and then I'm Dominican. And so we had a whole podcast about being Latinx and what that means.
Okay.
What I find interesting is because my stepfather's Italian. I was raised in Brooklyn. I'm around a lot of Italians. And when I saw you and thought your name was Michael Trevino, was how I said it in my head, I was like, oh, he's Italian. He must be Italian from New York. To me, you read Italian from New York, and I could not have been more wrong, because you're Mexican from LA.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that and like how that hits you, first of all. And being that you are from LA, I think there is a very big difference to the Latinx population on this coast versus on the East Coast. So do people normally think or know that you're Mexican, or do they think you're white, or how does that usually go down?
I think they think I'm white. I think people think I'm white, and when they hear or read my last name, they think I am Italian. And forever, always, I've always gotten, "Are you from New York? Or you seem like you've got a New York vibe." I don't even know if I give off a New York vibe. Been there many times. I love it. Really, see, this is interesting because I've been told that. I've been in New York plenty of times, and I love it out there. But I've been told that, yeah, you give off a New York vibe, and I'm like, okay, interesting. And I never get Mexican. No, never get Mexican. I'm very light complected. It's the Spaniard blood that from my mom's side of the family that I'm very light complected, where it's like almost in, there's blonde hair, blue eyes Mexicans in Mexico City. Like they're walking around everywhere there. And so I think I just have part of that, part of those genetics in me. But I look white. And for me, I guess in this business, Kane was the first job that I booked a Latin character. And that was a Cuban American, third generation, and they show that, and they specifically point that out in the series. So I think that's probably maybe what was in my favor in booking that, because I know I don't look Cuban, but maybe CBS at the time was like, he doesn't look Cuban, but he's Hispanic, but he can be a mix, or he could be the third generation. We buy it, and so maybe that's how that happened. But most of my work roles, books that I've ever booked, I've even done an Italian for sure. Many times, but no, rarely is it Hispanic. I mean, it was for Kane, and right now, thankfully, it is for Roswell, New Mexico.
Right. Yeah, see, I find that so interesting. That's a lot of what we talked about, because I think in Hollywood, especially, the Latinx people that are portrayed are usually the fairer-skinned ones, the lighter-skinned ones. But then, yes, if you're white passing, then you will be cast as white. And in my case, if you're Afro-Latina or Afro-Latino, then they'll mostly just cast you as Black or African-American. And there's just such a stereotype of what a Latin person should look like.
For me, there have been many roles that I have been asked to audition for, that I have read, that I have loved, but I know that they're not going to buy me as Mexican enough. It bothers me. It does, because I'm like, I'm this fucking guy. I fucking know this guy. Like what? I can do this, and I'm so, even before I go in the room, I'm like, they're not gonna buy it. I know it, and it's all just the negative thoughts that go into my head. It's true though. It's never happened. But they
Michael,
won't.
we have exactly the opposite problem.
They won't. I know. They will. Yes, exactly. So you get it, but they won't. And it sucks because I'm full-blooded Mexican. My family's here. I want to represent. But I'm never booked in those roles where it's like, oh, this is the Mexican from East LA role. Like, they're not going to give me.
Even though you're a Mexican from East
even though
LA.
I'm a Mexican from East LA, they'll never give me that role. And I understand it. I get it. Okay, sure, makes sense. But it kills me because, I will still get the auditions, and I'm like, this isn't going to work. It's not enough for, this just isn't, it's not going to work.
Yeah. Well, that's, so right there, what you just said is exactly what I wanted to talk to you about, because I had a feeling that was the case.
Oh, yeah.
And it's fucking annoying, and it makes me so angry because I feel like they do that over and over again, and it's at either a spectrum of the colorism chain of Latin people. But it's a really frustrating thing to think, like, you won't get booked as something that you are 100%.
100%, yeah.
Because of a stereotype of what everyone thinks a Mexican from East LA should look like, or a Puerto Rican from New York should look like, or, X, Y, or Z. And so that's just such an interesting, and you said you're first generation as well, right?
Yes.
You were born here.
I was born here, but my father was born here. Yeah, he was born in more central California, just south of Fresno, but my mother, she was born in Mexico.
Yeah.
I mean, my mother's family's huge. All my tios and tias, half of them were born there and came over, and only 4 of my uncles were born here. Or 2 of them, I'm sorry, 2 were born here, 2 were born over there. So it's a huge, shift in generation there. And, but yeah, I mean, but I'm still the white boy. And it's
not
like,
Mexican
I know,
enough.
not Mexican. No, you're still a Mexican little white boy. And I'm like, oh God.
Do you get it from your family too?
Oh, cousins for sure. All the time. Yeah. I get teased and bagged on a bit. Yeah, for sure. It's, I've dealt with that, within my family, growing up. All out of love, but I get jabbed at for sure with that. But it's, when it comes to these certain roles, it's like, I don't know what it is. Casting knows, okay, here are all the actors who are Hispanic, right? And I think they see that, and I don't know if it's a quota thing, but I'm always getting the audition for the lead in David Ayer's Tax Collector, right? But right. For some gangbanger, this and that, I'm getting the audition Because on paper, it's like, yes, he's Mexican, he's Hispanic. But then when they see the reel, or I come in the room and you see me in person, and it doesn't, it might sound right, but it doesn't look right in their eyes, I feel. And so everything's got to line up for me with the Hispanic roles. I mean, look, let's be honest. So I'm on Roswell, New Mexico right now, right? And it's the first time where I'm playing like Mexican American. And I love it. I've spoken Spanish on the series in season 1. My mother's Mexican, and the family, we show that and we embrace it. I love it. And I'm thinking, I wonder if on any other network I would have been cast as a Mexican American. But I'm Mexican American for the CW. So, it really, everything has to fall in line. It's like, what network are we talking about here? What is this? What is this on a... Explain that.
Why do you think CW would allow it over... Oh, because of what you look like?
Well, I just think...
Oh, I know what you mean.
I think it's
you're like the pretty boy version of the
Yes. Yeah. You're
the white version, or the...
Yes. Connect the dots for me here.
Okay, I'm trying.
No.
I'm trying to get it out in the book.
Look, I'm not bagging on any network. It's just saying that like the CW's version of a Mexican American is me.
Is you. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
But I would tell you that if I went to Netflix or HBO or some other networks would think differently. They would look at me and be like, you're not Mexican American. So and I'm not, this isn't, I'm not being negative. It's just pointing out, the difference here. And that's what it is. And I guess it doesn't make it good or bad. It's just, it really is dependent on, producers, network, who's telling the story. What are we, what are we showing here?
And the irony is, if you go back and listen to episode 8 with Carlos, who's Puerto Rican, he said a similar thing. He's like, hey, I get it. To these people, I quote unquote look Mexican. I don't look Puerto Rican. And so I only get cast as Mexican, even though I'm 100% Puerto Rican. And it's just like, yeah, but guys, like, I want us to all stop accepting this and start saying like, hey guys, guess what? There's not a fucking certain way that a Mexican looks or a Puerto Rican looks or a Dominican looks. Like, we all look like all the things. But that's my idealism of what Hollywood needs to become one day.
I hear that coming from you, and it makes me think, well, God, you just have to write this story.
Well, I am. Maybe that's the pilot I'm working
on. Okay. All right. Well, I'll make sure I'm on a veil whenever this gets ready. Let me know when you're pitching, okay? Because I want in.
For sure.
Yeah, in exactly this moment here, I call you out on that, and you're saying, well, maybe that's what you're working on. Maybe this is the way things are supposed to be, this moment in time. Like, this is what's happening, right? We're having this conversation, we're talking about it, and through this, it's like, this hasn't been written this way. Or like, we need to show that this isn't how Puerto Ricans look. This isn't how Dominicans look. They don't always look like this. Let's show them like this. And let's actually call it out to the audience and say, hey, and spell it out if you have to, but make it either, in light or a comedy or whatever, and show like it isn't always this way. Through that, art is going to be created. And I feel like that's what's happening now. And now through every streamer and cable network, we see all races and know that everybody looks different, right? It's not what we thought it would be. And so it's all changing. And so I think it's changing for the better, and representation across the board is getting better. I feel that it is. We could always do better. I mean, it's been a problem for years, but it's getting better.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. So if we had to title this episode, is it not Mexican enough, or is it not patient enough? Or are we tied? Not a Mexican patient enough.
I want to go with I am not patient enough.
Okay, patient enough.
Yes,
great.
patient.
And then we'll include the Mexican
patient
part.
enough, and I think when people hear, they'll be like, oh, I see what this is really about.
I love it. Well, is there anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up here?
I have one more question for you.
I love that you were the first guest to turn this around on me.
But this is good. So because it's for me. It's for me. I need to know. So, and I'm also doing this on a podcast, so I'm holding myself accountable because I can't talk about it and then not come through with it. I want to write a short, and I have never done that before. It's not like I want to pull from any idea ever, like just to do it, right? I want something that's meaningful. I'm struggling with coming up with an idea, right, that really hits home. And so could you give me any advice, because I know you've done many, any advice to me on where I should start?
The answer is so obvious. We just talked about it. Not Mexican enough. Write what you know. Write your life story. Like, that is a funny fucking short. That can be a funny short. Just every experience you've ever had of not feeling Mexican enough within your family, within
the family, I've got
workplace,
a lot. There's yeah.
I mean, and that's all you need. I mean, a short film can be 5 to 10 minutes, which means all you need is 5 to 10 pages. One really funny scene that you can think of your life. I think, especially when you're starting out as a writer, I mean, throughout your life as a writer, I think people say this, but especially when you're starting out, take it from your real life. Like, what has stood out to you? And it might not seem interesting to you at first,
Right.
but I guarantee it is to other people, because we take for granted how unique each of our POVs are and how unique each of our experiences are. And that's what you should write about. Write your story.
That is super helpful.
You could even use that title if you want.
Thank you. No, I appreciate.
Since we're naming the podcast Not Patient Enough.
Not patient enough. Yes, that's very helpful, and I want to end on that note, because it's just more information that I'm trying to gather and help that I'm trying to get. And I know that if anybody else is listening to this that's in the same boat, like, that's great advice. Like, sure, you've always heard write what you know, but yeah, we just did it here. I didn't even think about that. Like, that would be fucking hilarious. I got a lot of moments of cousins that are bagging on me. That's really, really funny moments of like, why can't I just be accepted for, I know I look like this, but I'm not this, I'm that. And so that alone is, I can pull from a lot there. That's helpful.
Well, I love it, and I look forward to reading it. And thank you, Michael, so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Not Blank Enough. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. And follow us on Instagram at NotBlankEnoughPod. Until next time, thank you for listening. Check the show notes for links and info about today's guest. This episode was produced during the COVID-19 pandemic of 2020 and recorded remotely. Our show today was produced by Gracie Mercedes and Dave Hill and edited by Douglas Sarine and Colleen Beasley. Not Blank Enough is a Gumption Pictures production.